Well, working in the media can certainly be a roller coaster. Believe me, I've experienced great highs and great lows. Now, a couple of weeks ago, someone I greatly admire, Seb Costello, decided to leave the Nine Network after 13 years at Channel 9. Like anyone who's worked in this industry, he's had some great stories to tell, so I thought I'd get him in for a chat. Seb Costello, welcome to McKnight Tonight.
Great to be with you, Rob. It's nice to reconnect online. Loved working with you when we were colleagues, and I've kept an eye on you ever since as you've gone around the networks and then now doing your own thing. It's pretty cool. I'm jealous.
Oh, thank you, mate. Well, look, let's start with the elephant in the room. You had a great career at Nine, but in November, you made headlines for allegedly chasing a finance company executive into a woman's toilet and filming him over the top of the locked cubicle. Nine launched an investigation, which was going on for 3 months. You were stood down during that time, but before there was a finding, you decided to quit. Why?
Yeah, I think after 13 years, I saw the best of free-to-air TV reporting. I got to be part of a overseas bureau. I got to travel the world. I got to cover federal elections, international summits, Olympics. And I thought, you know what? At some stage, I'm going to have to think of a future after television. I've just had a daughter, a 2-year-old Annabelle, who's beautiful.
Gorgeous.
And the time just seemed right to decide to make that transition. And I think I was keeping an eye on, let's face it, our industry, media, content creation, whatever you want to call it, is moving so fast. Television isn't that protected industry that it was in the 20th century. The only way you could deliver audio-visual messages into people's homes now, everyone's got a smartphone and they're getting thousands of messages a day. And so, I had to be realistic that I wasn't going to get from 38, which I am now, to retirement age in linear television. So there was going to have to be a transition out at some point into the next step, the second chapter. And after 13 years of doing my job as a TV reporter with as much care and compassion and conviction, I guess conviction was a big thing for me. I'm ready for something new.
But there's no doubt that, to me, I'm assuming that this event was a bit of a catalyst. And look, I've done some digging, Seb, and everything I've heard about this interaction, to me, you didn't do anything wrong. I think one of the most surprising things here is in any other period of a current affairs history, this would be a nothing story. To me, from what I've heard, it sounds like the guy didn't want to talk and he thought he would get away from you by going into the woman's toilet. He was basically hoping to wait you out until you got bored and left. So I'm at a loss that this became the story it did. And while the network gave a half-hearted statement supporting you, they didn't really, to me, seem like they were supporting you. Did that surprise you?
Look, I've always been told to chase hard. That was sort of the number one rule when I got to Nine 13 years ago, chase hard. And I think I've got a reputation for doing that. I put absolutely everything I've got into a story, and I do everything I can to fight for the person in the middle of the story. That's something that's really important to me. I come from a family where service is a really big deal, and the way I saw my professional service is, as a journalist, using the platform that I had through Channel 9, and I've worked with Triple M and 3AW, but at Channel 9, to use that platform to give a voice to an everyday person who wouldn't be heard without that sort of platform, without the Channel 9, a current affair machine behind them. And right up to my last day doing that job, that's what I was doing. I was chasing hard and fighting for the little people who would get forgotten if people didn't give them a platform.
You were doing exactly what you were expected to do, chasing alleged bad guys down.
Look, I took my job very seriously, and I feel really honoured that people trust me with their stories and have trusted me over the years. And since I've left, I've been really touched to hear from people whose stories I told over the years, who were grateful for the little wins we were able to get along the way.
The upshot of this is you did a great job getting results, and I know you can't talk about that last instance that led to the guy threatened legal action, and I assume you can't talk about it. This would have been part of your deal with Nine. But here's what I will say, and I'll ask you a question. This kind of stuff used to be the bread and butter of ACCA. I was a promo producer. That's where we first knew each other. I was making promos for A Current Affair. I'd be in those meetings and we would have looked at footage like that and we all would have been rubbing our hands with glee. I am at a loss that you didn't get the support you at all that you deserved. But what does it mean for the people working on that show now? You said, I chased hard. That's what I was paid to do. Will reporters and cameramen and audio operators feel that they've got the backing of the network to chase hard in those circumstances going forward?
Yeah, look, it's hard for me to say. The team will no doubt be having conversations every day about what the expectations are, and it'll be on individuals to decide how hard they're willing to go. But for me, the message I got from day one was chase hard, as I've said before. And, I started back in the days of a half-an-hour news bulletin when on the big stories that I was sent to, you would have the ABC, Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10, A Current Affair, and Today Tonight in those days, all fighting tooth and nail to get the same story. And the rule back then was if you got scooped, you basically didn't survive. And that's where I came from. I like to think I thrived in that. I had some, plenty of good days where I was the one who got the scoop. And that's how you survive.
Why 9 was
like
number one. They had a winning mentality.
Yeah, look, it was it was chase hard, and I did that right up until my last day at Channel 9, and I'm proud of the way I conducted myself at Channel 9. So, all good things come to an end, and it's on to the next thing for me.
Mate, I listened to your podcast with Sam Newman, which also made headlines. It's an awkward listen. What happened? Did you rush into doing an interview? Did you do it too early? You didn't seem ready.
Oh, that's a good question. Did I rush in? Yeah, that might be fair feedback. I think, I'm sort of... I sat down and I took tough questions. And I saw the coverage. I saw the Australian, I didn't like it. And they will write what they're going to write. I can't really control that. But there's a lot of people in TV and journalism who, care more about their Instagram followers than they do about serving the audience. They care more about things like, what's that horrible expression? Their personal brand. And I can't stand that, right? I'm not
Mate,
that guy.
I have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to brands as I drink from my McKnight tonight.
That's it. Mate, look, I always felt like if I ask tough questions in my role as a journalist, I have to be prepared to ask the tough questions back. And so, I was hoping that the interview might look back at more of the, hits that I'd had in TV. The interview of the 3,000 or 4,000 days that I'd got up before dawn, pulled on a suit and gone off to my job as a TV reporter. Sam wanted to talk about the 4 or 5 bad days I had. And, that's fine. And it probably didn't play out like I would have wanted it to. But at the same time, I'm proud of the fact that I stood there and did something that wasn't easy. It took some tough questions. I mean, I'm disappointed that I didn't handle the things. There were things like, as you mentioned, there are things I couldn't talk about, and I probably should have been firmer on that, or I probably should have made it clear why I couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because when you ask the same questions over and over again and I can't answer them, I begin to look a bit shifty. And I know that because I've played that trick as a journalist myself, and I tipped into it a little bit. But you know what? Like I said, it wasn't an easy thing to do, and I am proud of myself for taking myself out of my comfort zone, even though it didn't play out how I would have wanted it to, ideally.
I think it's pretty obvious from this interview that I am a fan of your work and what you do. But I don't think I'm the only one, because I did hear a rumour that I think it was back in 2016, Channel 7 tried to poach you. Is that true?
You've done your homework.
Always.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I suppose there's, look, I started at 9, 2012. And when I came in, I had agreed to be the permanent 6 a.m. starter, which meant I was the earliest starting reporter every day, weekdays. And then I was working on radio across the weekends. And that meant that I was front and centre for basically 4 or 5 years for what was known as the Essendon supplements saga. And, but I reckon just about every day for 2 or 3 years, I got sent to doorstop the Essendon Football Club coach, James Hird, and the media pack. The hysteria around that story is unlike anything I've ever seen before or since. As a young reporter, I got sent to James's house to doorstop him. I was then told to drive from where he lived to where his football club was and try and doorstop him again when he arrived at work. The pressure on that man was intense, and that story was crazy. But I worked my butt off on that story and became known as a sort of go-to person on that story. And so, that kind of led to some interest from other networks. So, what you're referring to is, in 2016, I got a call from a name some people might recognise in TV, Susan Wood, who was a bit of a jack of all trades.
Iconic publicist for Channel 7.
The incomparable Susan Wood, who, was not only the publicist, she was sort of people who've seen The Godfather, Kerry Stokes. If Kerry Stokes is Don Corleone, not that I'm suggesting they have similar business interests, but Don Corleone had a consigliere, Tom Hagen, and Susan Wood was kind of like Kerry's consigliere for a while. Anyway, Susan rings me up. She says, I need you to go to Crown straight away. And so, when I get that sort of request, off I went. And she said, I need you to go up to the business suites. And I've actually never been in the business suites at Crown. It's a place where you can rent a room for the day to conduct business if you don't want to be seen or you don't have a headquarters in Melbourne. And so I went to the business suites, and there waiting for me was the then Seven Network CEO, Tim Warner. And I'm just a on-the-road reporter at the time, so to have an approach from the CEO, was a pretty huge deal for me. He said, look, we would like you to consider coming across to the Seven Network. It was a great offer, and I took it back to Nine. Rather than keep it to myself, I said, hey, look, I'm getting an approach here, and it's very attractive. And I got the hang in there at Nine. We reward loyalty and that sort of spiel, and in the end, they did.
Which they used to do. In fairness.
Right. And they said, look, if you stay with the network, we're going to position you to have an overseas bureau. And the next year I was appointed as the London correspondent or the Europe correspondent.
Do you regret not taking the gig?
I do, actually. Yeah, I do. I think it probably would have been a good thing for me at the time. I think I was working in Melbourne in Australian rules football. I was working on Triple M, and I think I probably could have synced up what I was doing at Triple M, which was a lot of footy, at Seven, which was and is the host broadcaster of AFL. So, looking back, I wouldn't call it a regret in the sense that I don't sleep over it, but would it have been the better move at the time? It probably would have been, yes. But, mate, I'm impressed with your sources, how you dig this stuff up.
I'm known for them. Mate, It's no wonder Seven wanted you because you won a prestigious Quill Award at the Melbourne Press Club. You've covered amazing stories like Cocaine Cassie. You've worked with David Attenborough. But you do have a famous father, former treasurer and former chair of Nine, Peter Costello. Everyone loves using the term Nepo baby to put people down. But do you feel like you can claim your success of your own, or do you think you got that break because of your father? Did you get extra chances, or do you think you've really made it? The proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Look, it's a totally fair question. But there's a bit of me that resents the fact that I have to justify this and explain this, because it's been a bit of a weight around my neck my whole life, and look, I'll go through the dates with you just because you've asked. My dad was in government from when I was 8 to when I was 20. Didn't see a lot of him. He was working in Canberra. And when he was still working in Canberra, when I was about 19, I decided that I wanted to start a media career. And he was an MP. He, as far as I could observe, hated the media. And so there was no way I, as an 18, 19-year-old, could ever foresee that our paths would cross in my chosen field. So I went off and started as close to the bottom as I could. There was a website back in those days for radio jobs called Jock's Journal, and I basically
it's
applied
still
to
around.
every job I could find. Still around, there you go. Okay. And I applied to every job I could find, and in those days you put your air check, your best bits onto a CD, compact disc. Gen Zers probably won't know what that is, but we used to have a lot of them. And you sent it around the country, and I got a job at a station called Max FM on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. And so I started in that a pretty small regional town, and bounced around. I worked in Echuca, on the border, and then ended up doing some production work at 3AW. And then around 2011, 2012, TVs came knocking, and I first had an offer from Kate McGrath, who I later worked with at Channel 9, but at that stage she was at Channel 10, and she made me an offer to join Channel 10, which I didn't take at the time. And then in 2012, I had an offer to join 7 from the Melbourne News director Simon Bristol, and an offer to join 9 from the 9 News Melbourne director Hugh Nayland, who's still at 9. And I decided to join 9. And and I started my career there. And so it was only after, so I started my career, I'm on the road working as a reporter. And after I had taken that job and begun working there, my dad later became a member of the board at Channel 9. It wasn't something that he spoke to me about, which was, I guess,
which was right, to be honest.
It was probably from a conflict of interest, but, from a son to a father, I kind of felt like I would have liked to have had the discussion about it, but we didn't really talk about it. And then later he became the chairman. And so, the easy narrative becomes, that I was this Nepo baby who progressed through the company because my dad was the boss. But, I got there before he did. I left after he did. As you say, I won an award voted on by a group of my peers. And I'm proud of what I did as a journalist at Channel 9. So, I think some people like to say that, or would like to. I feel sometimes that there is a narrative to me that having Peter Costello as my father made my life easier. I don't see it that way. I actually think it was a real challenge for me, particularly in the media.
Yeah, mate. You made headlines yourself. You didn't need your dad to do that. I want to play one of the most infamous bits with you. It was on ACA. It was your run-in with Ricky Nixon. Here it is, in case you need a reminder. I'm sure you don't.
Sorry.
We just approached the man who calls himself Chicken. We wanted to know about his controversial new business venture, but things quickly escalated.
How do you actually create skin brightening for somebody? Rick, sorry.
Nixon's big hit, his elbow slamming into my jaw, the former AFL player and player agent with a fixed glare in the moments that follow. Nixon retreats into a bank where he looks quite pleased with himself before appearing to call police.
South Melbourne Police.
To be honest, Rick, we'd like to speak to the South Melbourne Police as well.
To Bay Street right now.
Yeah. Rick, I think if the police are going to attend, maybe we have a complaint to make as well, Rick.
The only trip I know is you. Get out of my way.
Hey, Ricky, don't touch it, mate. Don't touch it.
That's an insult.
All right? You've already elbowed me. What, are you going to now push her out of the way? Get real, Ricky.
Why are you insulting the media, Ricky, when we just want to talk to you about this business venture?
And they say chivalry is dead. It's a bizarre moment. Out of all the bounces you've done, and that's what they call those when you rock up and start talking to someone, you wouldn't have expected that to happen on that day, but you handled yourself really well.
Yeah, look, yeah, I mean, he calls himself the Chicken. I thought free-range chickens were supposed to be more peaceful, rather than swinging a wing out at a journalist. No, look, that is the story I get asked about the most. In fact, I'm kind of proud that it features in the opening credits of the ABC's Media Watch.
It does too.
I think you've made it when you feature there. We had done a story a few weeks earlier. So this was the second run-in a short period of time with Ricky Nixon and myself. And we'd done a story a few weeks earlier where a current affair viewers who had barracked for the Melbourne Football Club had tried to purchase footballs that were advertised as having been signed by the 2021 Melbourne Premiership team. And Ricky Nixon was selling these footballs. And they paid thousands of dollars for the footballs. And when they arrived, it was quite clear that the signatures had been forged. Now, Ricky says it wasn't him who did the forging. He says he was a victim as well. But we approached him to talk to him about that. And so I think already I wasn't his favourite person by the time we returned to Bay Street, Port Melbourne, to ask him about his next business venture, which was a series of IV infusions, which Ricky said would make your skin. It would make your skin brighter. And the Australian Medical Association had serious questions about these offerings. And that's what we were asking about when he swung around. What made that more remarkable was I was actually scheduled to do a sort of news panel chat with 3AW that day. And the news panel chat began almost immediately after the confrontation with Ricky Nixon. And so I'm live to air on the radio when Nixon re-emerges after having elbowed me in the face and starts yelling at me, or, not yelling, but starts rather firmly telling me to hang up the phone, and sort of stalks me down Bay Street. At this stage, our cameraman...
And this is happening live on radio. On 3AW, the biggest radio station in Melbourne.
Our cameraman had gone to, I think, ring the office to tell them what had happened. And so the sound recorders actually had to pick up the camera and hit record to record the second part of this extraordinary episode. I haven't sort of had anything to do with the chicken since then, but I'm sure if I do pop up, he is unlikely to be happy to see me.
Well, that is your most famous bounce. And I want to get, before I let you go, I want to get your thoughts on this, because the MAFS Funny podcast, they literally said they took their inspiration from a current affair when Josh Fox, he bounced John Aitken because he had questions about Married at First Sight. Nine weren't happy about it. Have a look and I'll get your thoughts in a moment.
Hey John, MAFS Funny podcast, mate. How you doing?
Josh.
A couple of questions for you.
I'm not going to answer your questions, but I will introduce myself.
Do you ever feel ethically and morally compromised what you do on that show?
Do you know what? I'm not going to answer your questions.
Yeah.
But what I would suggest you do is you put them to Nine.
I have
or Endemol Shine.
None of them replied to me.
And
I've messaged you as well.
Have you?
Yes.
When did you do that?
Last night.
Is that right?
Yes. You got nothing you wish to say?
God.
Do you not agree this season's crossed the line?
I'm amazed that you're at your perseverance.
Well, no one's answering these questions.
Maybe that's a you problem.
I think it's a you problem, what's happening on the show. You've also been accused of enabling abusive behaviour.
What else you got for me, Josh?
Do you and your wife follow the tasks you're doing now? Would you go share a bed with someone else for a few days to strengthen the marriage?
What else you got?
Is it the money or the fame why you keep going against the principles of a psychologist?
Now, Nine sent a letter to Josh accusing him of harassing John Aitken. Considering what you've done throughout your career, do you think Josh did anything wrong there?
That is fantastic TV.
It's
well
textbook,
done,
isn't
Josh,
it?
From MAFS Fun. Oh, it's brilliant. It's so watchable. And, Josh does it exactly how you're supposed to do it, without backing down, but not being too rude or annoying. He's done his homework. He knows what he wants to ask, and he does it really well. I think it's great TV. If I was an executive producer of a current affairs show, I'd be chucking it on as soon as possible. Kudos also to John, by the way, who I think
this was my next question, because I agree. I think he handled it pitch perfectly.
I think he was brilliant. In fact, I've been sitting at home watching MAFS thinking, has John Aitken been nominated for a Gold Logie before? Because he is brilliant.
Well, hang on.
He is
as a presenter or an actor?
Oh, okay. I'm not touching that one. But I've often thought, no, seriously, I've often thought that it's been, I think, more than 10 years since a current affair has had East Coast competition in that primetime current affairs time slot. If Channel 7 were ever to reboot Today Tonight, I'd be giving Josh from MAFS Funny a job because he's brilliant.
I agree. And on MAFS, it's the biggest show Nine has. They seem very protective of it. So what did the network think when you revealed last year's groom, Timothy Smith, was a drug smuggler. You did a story. I can't imagine that went down well. This is what it looked like, but were they happy or were they upset?
Married at first sight.
Well, I mean, let me tell you, Rob, they were absolutely... Oh, are we listening to this or...?
No, it's just overlay.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
You old TV pro.
That's it. You asked me if they were happy.
I'm not the same person.
I saw the ratings on the story. They were ecstatic because the story rated its absolute backside off. It was one of the biggest rating stories of that period of the show because it was, of course, replayed the night after the MAFS finale. So it was almost like the MAFS finale part 2. Here's a little nugget you didn't know about. Okay. But that didn't mean that before it got to air, people within the network were too happy about it. In fact, we knew we had a good story. This is me and the current affair team. I should say, Tim came to me through a friend. We had a mutual friend in Melbourne, and Tim rang me one day and said, look, there's something that I would like the public to know that I haven't been able to share yet. And I'm thinking, maybe he's not actually still with his TV bride or something. And he then tells me this extraordinary story of how, without a license or any helicopter training, he used to fly helicopter loads of marijuana from the Canadian side of the border over to North America.
And he gave this up voluntarily.
He needed to get it off his chest. Yeah, he felt like this was something he needed to share, having just been down the road of a really high-rating reality TV show. And, like I said, there were people in the network who thought, this is just an incredible story. We have to tell it. But there were others who were very protective and thought, maybe we don't want the public to know that our MAFS groom has this sort of background. Maybe we want to, stop the story. And there were people within the network, even on the day that I was shooting, that were trying to stop the shoot from going ahead. They were trying to get on to Tim and tell him that this was not a good idea, but he trusted me and he wanted to tell the story. So we did the old, let's just get it in the can and see what they say later.
So on that note, what is the balance between journalism and commercial agreements? Does ACCA pull its punches when a sponsor is involved? And is it more likely to punch down than punch up?
I never saw a sponsor story pulled. And I think that would be something that, I can only talk from my experience, and so I didn't see it. And, if there was that kind of conversation being had between sales and editorial, I wouldn't be involved in it. So, but having said that, I didn't see it. I can't say that it happened. So all I can say is I didn't see it.
Yeah. Seb, it's been fascinating. Seb Costello, thank you for joining me on McKnight tonight. Really appreciate it.
Well, Rob, I'm pleased to chat to you. I think I'd much prefer your company to Sam Newman's at the moment. And thanks for having me on.
A pleasure, mate.